Hello everybody and welcome back to the Word of Mouth English Studio channel. My name is Lisa and I am the founder and CELTA certified tutor here at Word of Mouth English Studio. In today's technical writing lesson, in this video tutorial, we will be focusing exclusively on essay writing. So today's video tutorial is particularly relevant to students, academic students who are currently training for either the Cambridge, CFE, first certificate, the CAE, as well as IELTS. So this is relevant to anybody who wants to write essays in future. So we're going to focus on what we call academic writing. Here we go. Today we're going to look at one of the 5 criteria for essay question that you might get in your IELTS paper. And as we all know, there are 3 main categories for IELTS questions that are further subdivided. So there are 5 different types of essay question in IELTS altogether. Today we shall be looking at one of them, the advantage-disadvantage essay, and we shall be looking at a very typical advantage-disadvantage question task, and then I'd like you to think about how you would structure this essay yourself if you were to write it. Now please note that after having read this question, I'll be showing you a typical candidate response that has been edited. So let's start by asking ourselves the question first. Let's read the question once over and read carefully before you think about how you'd format this essay. Right, so as you can see here, we have the question. Today, more and more tourists are visiting places where conditions are difficult, such as the Sahara Desert or the Antarctic. So, the second part of the question is now very relevant. What are the benefits and disadvantages for tourists who visit such places? So we automatically know that this is not going to be an opinion essay or a direct question essay. It's an advantage-disadvantage essay. So this should be rather clear to Cambridge students now. Think about how you'd format the essay. Paragraphing, think about how many paragraphs you'd give it. Style, think about style and register. Should it be informal, semi-formal? Should it be formal? What styles are you accustomed to in your writing? What adverbs or what phrases or fixed expressions would you use if you were to write this essay? And now let's have a look at an essay that was written by this particular student, this particular candidate. Okay, so what you're looking at is actually the edited version, the corrected version of the original sample essay. The original sample essay scored, as you can see, there you go. It's the original sample essay scored a 6 in terms of band score estimate. However, this edited version here would have given him or her a higher advantage and would have given him or her a 7, therefore elevating the band score estimate. Have a look at this essay format very quickly, or pause the recording to have a look at it. Note the words. Notice the words that are used. Have you ever used these expressions? Do you use them on a regular basis in your writing? What style has this candidate adopted? Is it informal? Is it all informal? Is it semi-formal? Is it all semi-formal? Is it formal? Is it all formal? Or is it a mixture of both? Mixtures of both are not typically given the highest scores. So think about how you would format it in terms of style and register, and what words you would have chosen instead. Now we're going to look at the editing process. In other words, when I modified or made adjustments to the original essay, how did I come to the conclusion of what score he or she should get. Now, he or she, remember, the original candidate got a 6 for this, not a 6.5, not an 8. But now we're going to look at the correction and editing process. Right, so once I corrected or marked this essay, I found quite a few errors, as you can see, or inadequacies or inappropriacies, that could have been modified. So those are marked or crossed out. For instance, let's start with the fact that the candidate used the word recently as opposed to the word nowadays, which he or she should have used instead. Recently and nowadays are very, very different in terms of usage and in terms of meaning and style as well. Also in terms of placement of the comma, right? As we can see, recently is always followed by a comma, however, the word nowadays isn't. Choosing your adverbs carefully is vital, especially in your opening and closing statements, which are going to be your juiciest parts of the essay. We say you go traveling or you travel. We do not say you go to travel, so therefore that was crossed off. Prepositions here are important. You travel to a country or location, not travel in. You might travel in a car, for instance, or in a vehicle, right? So think about the prepositions you use. Abbreviations such as EG are not allowed and not accepted in Cambridge exam preparation. Therefore, EG was excluded and therefore crossed out and replaced with the terms such as. The term, for instance, for example, an example of this, or other examples are just as good. The student or candidate then left out a particle between the words Japan and Europe, which I then put in. You have experiences on a trip. You don't have experience on a trip. The word experience is uncountable, such as in job experience, where you can say, I have some job experience, because it's seen as a holistic thing or as a holistic view or perception. However, when it comes to the word experiences, you're talking about a variety of experiences that didn't, you're looking at them individually, not holistically. And that is what was meant over here, the word experiences rather than experience. So you have experiences on a trip, not in a trip. And over here, the candidate meant to write that, not where. So in this case, it was an error, a grammar accuracy error, where it had to do with choosing the correct pronoun, the relative pronoun. That is applicable, but where isn't. Why? Because we say there are places where ordinary people cannot go. So you go to a place, but you don't. You can name a place and you can go to a place. But if you go to a place, you're talking about the physicality of the place. So therefore, the pronoun you need to use is the pronoun where. However, the Sahara Desert or places that ordinary people cannot even name is correct, because you name a place, but you don't go to the place. It's different. So therefore, we use a different pronoun. And the word them has been omitted from the sentence as it is redundant. So that ordinary people cannot even name. These places are using having, right? So are using having is not a collocation in English. It does not exist. Therefore, this sentence was completely incoherent with it. We removed that and we replaced it with the word have instead. Now, in a simplistic way, you could say, these places have tough conditions. But again, that sentence, although grammatically accurate and structurally accurate, is a little too simplistic stylistically. So that could change and become more complex by changing the whole format. You travel to a place. Okay, here punctuation was omitted, and that the semicolon must be used. We say the Antarctic area, but we don't say the Antarctic regions. So word choice errors here. People who have seen them all, here we need to use the present perfect rather than the simple past, saw, because the present perfect talks about experience, right? It's used to discuss experience rather than using the past simple. And therefore, there must be consistency throughout. You can't use the past simple if you mean to say that the experience is still ongoing today or is still relevant today. In that case, the present simple is used instead. Say, is. They're still facts. They're still physical facts or geographical facts. So therefore, present simple is used. Some very different lifestyles. So if you used the plural quantifier here, then the plural noun or noun phrase should be used here. Here, when was replaced with if to indicate condition, okay, the mood, right? So if they live in a city rather than when, it's not about time or probability, but rather condition. So a conditional clause was needed. A city, here the candidate left out the indefinite article. We don't say rescue teams, but rather in English we say rescue emergency services to refer to the people who come to rescue you. And access, the verb here, you access a place. You don't rescue a place. You rescue people, but you don't rescue a place. And therefore here the student could not make a distinction between the verb and subject that he or she had to use. Therefore, there was a subject-verb disagreement. Make sure your verbs agree with your subjects. You access areas. You don't rescue areas. You rescue people. But people was not the subject. Okay, we don't start sentences in formal or semi-formal English with and. We usually leave that for informal English or text messaging if you're writing. You ask for help is not the same as you get help, and that is what the candidate meant to write here. It's difficult to get help from people. It's not as difficult to ask for people. And to conclude, or in conclusion, but not as a conclusion, your conclusion is important. Therefore, make sure that it is poignant and that you give your last, strongest reference here, and that your English is at its strongest. It is necessary for people to understand the risks, not it is necessary for people have understand. Okay, this might have been a literal translation, or it could have been that the candidate meant to write, it is necessary for people to understand. Right, finally we look at some examiner's comments, and here were the comments. The answer shows that there are some valid arguments. However, writing does not communicate knowledge. Ideas are loosely organized. The transitions from one sentence to another are sometimes weak. So that's why they got a 6 rather than a 7, despite the corrections. Despite the candidate showing some use of varied word choice in places, closure is ineffective and could have been better. The candidate does use voice with an understanding of a specific audience, however with a mixture of simple compounds together with simple complex sentences, so there was no consistency. There are occasional errors between parts of speech, some evidence of errors in word choice, and often a limited use of cohesive devices. So this was my comment. This was the way I saw it and the way I decided to comment on this particular student essay. So now you can compare this essay to your own and have a look at it in more detail. Thank you very much for joining us today to discuss the benefits and disadvantages of tourists who visit places. This was an academic essay report video. And join me next time to talk about more academic essays that you could be writing better. And remember the formatting and the style that we discussed in today's video, and try to do the same again when you're writing your own essays. Compare, contrast, and take notes. And see you next time in one of my other videos. If you liked this video, please subscribe to it below.